Well, good morning, everybody. Just a heads up on what's in this video. We're going to cover, of course, the systems that are rolling across North America over the next probably 15 to 20 days here to get us started. But I do want to let you know that I have some new long-range information out from the European models. It was just released early this morning, looking at the new seasonal forecast. It'll go out 7 months. We'll also take a look at El Nino later in this video. And I'll finish with some kind of updates on what's happening throughout South America. But the main point about the pattern I want you to see is that while we've got these shortwaves, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, you even have these pieces of the subtropical jet stream. Each one of those shortwaves is capable of building and delivering a low pressure system that could roll across the United States and parts of the Canadian prairie. That's right, we may have some moisture coming into the Canadian prairie. But overall, as I look at this, what I find to be most important is there are no large-scale blocking features that are going to slow this pattern down or cause some issues with it. So the best part about this pattern is it's going to be delivering moisture, and this is something that is needed. We've got to get the United States continuing to work against its drought issues so that we can work our way into this growing season, which will be starting here for many across the country within the next 4 to 6 months. So I like seeing it. This is the kind of active winter pattern we've needed to have. Now, I'll tell you something about winter patterns, and it's just real quick here. I hate to say this the way I'm going to say it, but the nastier the winter, typically the better the spring and the summer. So in other words, we like to get a pretty vigorous pattern throughout winter to kind of do some restorative action across our main ag belts in the United States from west to east. And so to see something like this happen, a lot of us meteorologists, we do get excited about it because it's an active pattern. So let's get into this. Okay, over the last 72 hours, we've watched one system roll into California, and it delivered some decent snow to the Sierra Nevada. And the Sierra Nevada are off right now. They're behind on snowpack, so is much of the West. So to see what I'm about to show you is fantastic for Western mountains. We're watching this system this morning move through parts of the southern plains where it has already pulled up some decent moisture coming into Texas. We've had some snow on the backside. In fact, let's go look at that snow. Now, this is a 3-day snowfall map, but it goes through 6 p.m. Central Time yesterday. Okay, so it's through last evening. We had the lighter snow that moved through parts of the Great Lakes into New England, and then we saw the heaviest snows here in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Now, the biggest snows in the upcoming forecast, I know we've got several systems that are going to roll through the Midwest and a big one that's going to come up the East Coast, but the biggest snows are going to be in the Cascades. We may be talking about 5 to 6 feet of snow in the Cascades. So we cannot forget, for those of us that live on this side of the Rockies, that the beginning of all of this starts by rolling over the top of our coastal mountain ranges. Now, I want to add to this what fell between 6 p.m. and midnight, and we'll get an update on this map in a few hours. That'll show us till morning. But this is where we've already seen some of that snowfall in Colorado, Kansas, getting here to the panhandles coming out of New Mexico. Now, as I think about where this is all going to go, there's one, I could call it an issue with the pattern. And it's better than it could be, but the thing we often look for if you want to get big snows getting farther and farther into the south, all right, is you want to have what we call antecedent cold. In other words, before the system gets there, I want to see a lot of cold air already in place. I'd love it if we could get one of those Tejano wind situations. Remember we talking about that back in fall, where the cold air's made it so far through the Gulf, you can't see it on this map, but it would go through the Tejano Pass and get into the Pacific. That's a good lead indicator that there's plenty of cold air in place. Now it's 6:30 this morning, that's when I'm recording. We've got cold air, but it's not the really deep, rich cold air that I want to make big snows farther and farther to the south. But as it stands, we've kind of got some patchwork here of winter weather advisories, winter storm watches, winter storm warnings. And in addition to all of this map over the next 15 days will go through many iterations where it's going to get quite colorful. Now, what are we looking at? All of the shades that you see here are winter weather advisories, so they're all over the country. We have some winter storm warnings that are out for the Sierra Nevada, parts of Oregon, and even parts of Washington. And then you see here that we've got in the Appalachian Mountains, we're going to be watching for the risk of ice. And there's a large area that's winter storm watch that's kind of set up right into this area. Now, that's not to ignore any other spot with this, but it's just to say that these are the key areas we're going to be paying close attention to in the very near term. And I thought we'd go right into the high-res NAM to kind of see what it's suggesting over the next, 50, 60 hours or so. So picking this up at 8 a.m. here on Friday morning and playing through the midday on Friday. There is a broader trough feature that's tucked away in the midsection of the country with the base of it coming out down here in the south. So as we notice, there's some light snow to the north, some snow coming out of Kansas today into Missouri. There might be some mixed precipitation in the middle, but the heaviest rain will be where the kind of the deepest part of that trough lives, which is down here coming across Louisiana and Mississippi. And remember, these are two states that for months have been in deep drought. So this is continuing to work against their longer term drought situation here. As we play this forward, we'll notice that through Friday night, getting into early Saturday morning, the NAM has started to put more snow into parts of Missouri, a bigger section of Illinois, and parts of Indiana with a little bit of mixed precipitation, maybe right along I-70. So be careful if you're traveling that corridor. Rains, though, in Kentucky, Tennessee, northern Alabama, Mississippi, right in through here, and heavy rains kind of rolling through parts of Florida and Georgia and coming into southern Alabama. Now, this is the low that we're going to watch set up the cold air damming event early Saturday morning right here along the Appalachian Mountains, and that's why the risk of ice is starting to really show up here. North of it, though, in parts of West Virginia, Kentucky, right along the Ohio River, we're looking at chances for getting some snow. And then as we play through midday Saturday, getting into Saturday afternoon and evening, this rolls into parts of Pennsylvania, New York. The deeper upper level trough still sitting here, delivering some light snow, but we're going to see in through this region the potential for some very, very heavy snow. Now the question we have is, does that icing threat roll right up here into this part of Pennsylvania? I guess we're closer to Lancaster, getting over toward Philadelphia, but that's going to be, I'm just going to make a statement here. I love it that I live in Illinois and forecast a lot of Midwest weather. Now, it's not to say I don't love the other parts of this country, but the most difficult places, in my opinion, to forecast the weather are East Coast snowstorms, the rain-snow line, the snow ratios. I mean, that is just, I told you yesterday, the temperature profile, the proximity to warm water, the soil temperatures, this is an absolute nightmare. And I want you all to know that, because a lot of times, a lot of criticism that comes at us on like, why didn't you get my snowfall right? And I'll be honest with you, we don't know till the event is going exactly where that rain snow line is going to be. The other spot, to be honest with you, is the west, especially the Pacific Northwest. The topography combined with the enhanced rain shadow effect, combined with the trajectory of the winds with respect to the mountains, means that predicting the weather here, plus the fact that the open Pacific is your source region, meaning we don't collect a lot of data from it, so we're often waiting to get systems here. I live in the Midwest where it's just flat and open. We have unobstructed, flow from the Gulf of Mexico. We can tap into cold Canadian air. There's no mountains. So it's just it's a beautiful place to forecast weather, the U.S., but it's highly dynamic. So I'm sorry about that, but that's what I often think about when I'm doing this. But I just played you through Saturday evening, and right in through here is going to be the most challenging point to predict that rain-snow boundary. And as we roll this forward into late Saturday night and early Sunday morning, you can see that we could be bringing in some pretty heavy snows into parts of Connecticut and Massachusetts, and then, of course, points to the north. On the back side of this, snow showers in place. And this is, remember, just the first system. Now, I mentioned the Northwest a moment ago. You saw the second system coming in here. This is Saturday. Watch the Northwest, the system rolling in here. And this is going to be a much, much bigger system because it's a much deeper trough. Now, before I get into that, I do want to point out that the National Weather Service, if you don't follow them, if you don't follow their Twitter feeds, and I guess they're on Facebook and stuff as well, please do, because they put out a tremendous amount of communication. They just don't have a channel. You can't go watch them on television. But they're the best. They're the best resource for this stuff. We have an outstanding National Weather Service, and you should be proud, for those of you watching in the United States, at what they are able to accomplish. So if you look right here, this is their message for the 6th through the 7th. They released this 4:30 a.m. Eastern time this morning. And I this is very consistent with what I have been seeing. So good stuff here. One thing to note, locally, more than a foot of snow possible in the interior. That's what we're going to be watching out for. Rain snow line, an absolute nightmare. Icing threat, up to 1/4 of an inch. They're backing that up here with their 72 probability map. It's that cold air damming setup right here coming out of North Carolina to Virginia. That's going to be a nightmare. So I know my good friend Dr. Dave Cole's got to get back here, and I'm worried that he might be having some travel issues getting into early next week as a result of all of this. In fact, this is coming this weekend, but it could linger into early next week. All right, while we're on this page, let me zoom back out here. Let's pull this over one more time, and let's just have a look at their snowfall maps. So let's click on snow. There we go. 72-hour probabilities. Let's go right on up to 4 inches. Now, as we take a close look at this, of course, we have light snow on the backside, heaviest into Ontario, parts of Minnesota. And then you'll notice right in through this corridor here, very high probabilities of getting at least 4 inches. Now, the mountains in the west, I'm going to show you them in a different way in a few moments. But let's go ahead and step this up to 8. And might as well go on up. I mean, look at this. Massachusetts, that's an 80 to 90% chance. And here's the chance. This is just in the next 3 days. So this is through Monday of getting a foot of snow, highest right in through this corridor. That is where the rain is going to switch over to snow and give you your, I guess, your most moisture with this particular system. And that's going to be the trickiest forecast to get. Now, are we using a 10-to-1 ratio? Yes. Is that going to be the right ratio to use? No, it's not. It never is up the East Coast. It fluctuates all the time. It's just an industry standard, so that's why we use it. In other words, 10 inches of snow out of 1 inch of liquid equivalent. Okay, from there, I do want to show you, for those of you that are in the Midwest, what I'll be watching for most carefully. This is the upper level vorticity map. So each one of these is what we call a short wave. That's all sweeping around the much broader long wave, which is here. And each one of them, when we advect or move a ribbon of vorticity, like this one here, over to a new area, you get lift in the atmosphere. It's partly a right-hand rule issue. So if you, for those of you that have kind of studied some physics, you might remember that the right-hand rule, look at the curl here, the vector would point up. You get rising motion. Now, the reason for that rising motion is partly due to latent heating issues and cooling issues on the back side. It's really a dynamic and quite fun thing to study, but I want to tell you what the end result is. That's the big one. Let me rephrase that. That's the big one in the kind of lineup. There's more bigger ones coming behind it. This is Monday night. Look at this deep wave ejecting over the mountains. That is just textbook. And right now it's supposed to be coming through the panhandles on Monday. It's expected to roll through Arkansas and Missouri, go right over almost Memphis, and then head over toward Nashville. Now, the thing that we will all be watching is really two things. How quickly does the low close off and stack up? Because if it closes off and stacks up like this, we have a better chance at bringing in colder air over a longer time period to take the snow farther to the south into Missouri, Illinois, Indiana. Okay, that will be the first thing. The second thing will be to notice if there is any sort of a northwestern trend in the position of that low. You see, if it goes through Little Rock over toward Memphis and goes to Nashville, then that keeps the snow line maybe around I-70. If we see this shifting north, and all of a sudden our snows come much bigger, farther and farther to the north, and you'll see the models kind of struggle with that. Then by the time we get this into next Wednesday, the tilt on this is shaped like that, which we call that negative tilt, which means the system is going to lift through New England rather than dig into New England. But it's going to be a massive system. And look what's following it. The next few waves are there, and I'm just going to play it quickly to show you that we're just not done. This is a 15-day at least active pattern, and we've got many more systems rolling through the middle of this month to be keeping an eye on. So let's go ahead and have a look at our model comparison. GFS left, that's a U.S. flagship model, European right. And let's just pick it up where the NAM left off, which was right in through Saturday. There we go, Saturday. Look at the differences between the models here. Saturday night on that snow. And this is when the next wave comes into the northwest, putting down some big snows, I think, in the Sierra Nevadas. One system exits east on Sunday morning. The next system is making it over the Rockies by Monday morning, right here. Now, for those of you in the central United States, here's the latest. This is Monday morning, Monday midday, and Monday evening. Now notice, look how much farther to the south the GFS is bringing the snow compared to the European model. The GFS deepens the low quicker, follows it farther to the south, and therefore has more cold air to deal with on the backside for snow. We'll look at the differences in a moment. Now, as we just play this forward, this is now Tuesday morning at 6 a.m., getting into Tuesday midday and Tuesday evening. Now, you can see once again, if the GFS stacks up a deeper low, it has more time to pull that cold air on the backside and much heavier snow. Don't forget or take notice of the next low coming into the northwest already by Tuesday. Now, is there a risk of severe weather across the south of this? Yes, because the forcing, the strength of the fronts, the pull on the moisture is going to be strong enough that we could get this system rolling through quickly, giving us the risk of that severe weather. But as we go forward, this is now Wednesday, getting into Thursday, Wednesday morning. I jumped too far ahead there. Wednesday morning, Wednesday midday, Wednesday afternoon, and evening. Now, do you see what I mean by a lifting system? It rolls into eastern Canada rather than digging here and running up the east coast. Now, if you get missed with snow and you're in this section of the country, there is more coming. So if you notice, I follow this out. We go here to Thursday into Friday. I mean, the European's already kicking off another low. The GFS has it as well. It brings it in a little bit later. But there are just more and more chances of getting systems to roll through here in the middle of the week. And to be honest with you, even though both of these models, remember their skill scores have dropped a bit, they're still in sequence with bringing systems through. So just sit tight. We've got quite a bit coming through in these next few days. One thing I want to make a case for, and a strong point for, is that with this second system, here we are on Monday, the maximum accumulated wind gusts, this is what I'm showing you here, this is really going to be ripping off some strong winds as the system rolls through from the plains to the south and up New England. Maximum gusts here, 40, 50 miles an hour. And then remember, there are more systems rolling through. Watch this area right here coming off of British Columbia. Wednesday, Thursday, watch Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Look at that. Look at that next system kind of pulling through there off the coast, but with its incredibly strong winds. Gusts, maximum accumulated gusts here, 70 to 80 miles an hour. That's a monster of a system off the coast. Okay, total liquid side of this first. Where's the heaviest rains? It's going to be down here across the south, up the southeast, and through the coast. Some places in through here will pick up, I think, 3 to 4 inches of rain out of this. On the back side, we're going to be talking about how much of this is going to be converted over to snow. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it'll be the Cascades that have the best chance at picking up the highest precipitation totals here in terms of snowfall. European model 7-day, GFS 7-day. Pretty consistent overall in the bigger picture of where the moisture is coming through. And what this kind of moisture is it is the beginning of a drought bust. And I'm talking about mid-south. I'm talking about the southern Mississippi River Valley. I will be watching all weekend long for how this moisture starts in the beginning to get into the river, and then by the end of next week, we'll see if that Mississippi makes a big recovery like it did a year ago. All right, this is GFS. We looked at that. All right, now we got to do the snow. I'm going to do the same thing I did with you yesterday. I apologize. I'm recording a little bit later than normal because my security certificates expired on my website yesterday. I got them delivered to me this morning, and I had to spend some time getting them updated. So for all of you that use agweather.com, I'm so sorry it was down. I got the security certificates fixed. You can go use it again. I'm going to go to Weatherbell, though, for my maps this morning. Icon model. This is the one run out of Germany. You're looking at the eastern half of the country. Just take it in. This is what we've got. I want to stick with the icon and now take you to the west. No, I don't want to do that. I want to stay here in the east, and I want to go up to the newest ECMWF. Now, we have a 6Z run, so I need to go back to the 0Z and take it out over the same time period. There you go. Big changes in the European model were for the snow that was moving through parts of Illinois and Indiana. These numbers have come down a bit, but you can see from Missouri to Michigan, the heaviest amounts, and then it's also capturing bigger snows back in Iowa, Minnesota, and some in Wisconsin. Now take a look at this. The rain snow line in the icon, the European, very sharply running right in through this area. Again, this is a 10-to-1 snow ratio, probably not applicable the closer you get to the warm water and the rain snow line. But in the interior, some heavy snows are possible. While we're here, let's go look at the GFS. Now, the GFS is one of our faster models to come out, so we actually already have the 6Z run. So you're looking at the newest run we've got, and I see a similar picture overall here, but notice the difference on the snow from Missouri to Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. Big, big, big snows in the model. 10-to-1 ratio, again, is what we're using. And we want to look at the trend, so if we go back to the 0Z run, I see something similar. So this is where the GFS has got its biggest snows. The European doesn't. It's got it back further over here. So just so you understand this, the GFS right now, look at this part of Iowa, wants to put down 1 to 2 inches of snow. Remember what the European showed? The European, let's go back to that 0Z run, is trying to put down back there 8 to 10. So this is the model differences, all about the speed of the low and its depth. While we're on the ECMWF, let's go back to the West Coast. Sorry if you can hear a car alarm. I'm working in my car this morning, and someone out in this parking lot just set their alarm off. Anyway, West Coast, next 7 days, as I mentioned, 4+ feet of snow are possible here. Look at that. Look at the northern Rockies, all the way to the central Rockies, the Sierra Nevada. This is everything we need. Coming out of Colorado into Kansas, that's the European solution. Let's go ahead and flip it over. Why don't we stay in Europe, but just go to the icon model. The 6Z run came in, but we need more data than that. So I'm going to go back to the 0Z. There you go. Very similar look. Yeah, very similar look overall. And if we switch to the GFS, there's the 6Z run. So Kansas, but just take a look at these snowfall amounts back here in the mountains. That's where all the flow's entering. And compared to the 0Z, yeah, pretty consistent forecasting in the GFS. So I know we spent a lot of time on that, but I want to show you what we've got from the models. Every map was a 10-to-1 ratio. Okay, probabilities. European model, who's got a best chance of getting 3 inches of snow? A deep red is 90 to 100%. So let's step this up to, 0Z run again. Sorry, the 6Z run kind of trickles in as I'm trying to record. All right, that's the chance at getting 6 inches. Now take a close look at that map. Best chance at 6 inches. And here's a foot. And we're just going to keep going. Look at this. Jeez. And look at the west. 18, 24, 36. Look at these snowfall totals. And how about 48 inches? Maybe even the Sierra Nevada a little bit. So that's what I got. That is what the models are showing at this point. We've got an idea on the snow swaths. We've got an idea on the snow amounts. I'll just leave it right back here on the 6-inch number. That's what I want you to kind of take home as an idea. Now what's happening after this? The jet is not quitting, and we've got the same scenario. See this? Ridging here, ridging there, and the flow dives underneath it. That is the southwest flow I begged for in December and finally got my wish now in the month of January. And here we are on the 15th still seeing it. So what this ends up doing is it ends up, whoops, I don't want to look at that. It ends up doing this for us. And that is going out there into week 2, we stay wet up the East Coast. Flow comes into the Northwest. So this is the risk of heavy precipitation into the 12th through the 18th. This is the risk of heavy snow. So if the flow continues to do this, just coming into the country here, moderate risk of very heavy snow in the Four Corner states, all throughout the Rockies, the Sierra Nevada, the Cascades. And then on the northern side, if we can get plenty of antecedent cold air, in other words, cold air that precedes storms, yeah, we'll talk big snows here. And then we have to talk about the cold air that's coming in on the backside of this. Now, in the near term, I told you we have a bit of a problem with cold air, but we're going to get it in place very soon. Our frost threat over the next 7 days, all but the southern part of Texas, right along the Gulf Coast in Florida, maybe pockets of Southern California, we may stay warm. But when I say warm, above freezing. But this is what the temperatures are doing. There's Friday's highs today compared to average. Getting into Saturday and Sunday, this is the setup for the big system that follows. Remember, it comes out on Monday. There it is, plenty of cold air, but the warm up ahead of it means rain first. And as we go from Monday into Tuesday, this is why it's very tricky in this corridor to pick out where that snow is going to be. Look at the temperatures. And then you go into Wednesday, and you say, why is it so warm here? Well, it's warm because that trough, the tilt, remember I said it's lifting. So we're going to pull warm air back in, which means that snow that's in here is going to melt. I will tell you this, if there's a bunch of snow on the ground here, the likelihood of these forecast temperatures being accurate is low. They might not get this warm. But we watch next Thursday as the real push of really cold air comes in. And if you look out there, excuse me, day 5 through 10, we're off my color bar in terms of average temperature anomalies, which goes down to -20. So we might be 20 degrees colder than average here. Again, the reason, we pushed all the warm air here into Alaska with a big ridge, Greenland with a ridge. That cold air had to go somewhere. We're building a bit of a storehouse of it here, and it's going to last all the way dated 10 through 15. Now, there's some indications that this could last a lot longer, but we want to know, when does this begin to break away from this? Is it getting any support from the polar vortex, the stratospheric one? Possibly. The polar vortex is disrupted primarily by this big upper level, and I say upper level, I'm talking stratospheric ridge that's kind of breaking the polar vortex off into a couple of pieces. But if this feature was over here, then I would tell you that we have a link between where the troughs are going to dive in and the polar vortex in the stratosphere. So they're not fully coupled just yet. My problem with telling you that the cold air could last for a long time is that over the next 2 weeks, if the MJO moves here, this could give us a signal for later in the month some return to some mild air. But I don't think that this phase diagram is doing justice to the actual behavior in the tropics, because if you look at what we call the velocity potential, this is where the air is rising in these colors. It's rising a lot over phase 1 and then eventually to phase 6, 7, and 8. These are actually colder phases. 1 and 6, 7, 8 are colder phases for North America. If it was going right to phase 4 or 5, 3, 4, 5, I'd say warm, but I don't see that, which makes me think the colder air may last longer than mid-month, coming in that same stripe I showed you a moment ago. So we may be in for a pretty cold January with a lack of sustained multi-day warm events. The other part of this we're going to discuss in a moment is this. That's where the subsidence going. It's coming right back to South America. So sit tight. I'm going to get to that in a few seconds. But I do want you later on today to go to cpc.ncep.noaa.gov or just Google Climate Prediction Center. It'll take you here, and I want you to look at their new week 3, week 4 outlook. They're going to release it late today. It's not going to look, it is not going to look like this. Okay, they're going to really change this around in a big way for the middle and end of January. Now, what has changed in the forecast is that the models, when we get out there through most of February, this is a 30-day outlook ending on February 19th, they've reverted back to split flow again. So coming in here, rolling along the south, and that's very El Nino-y look, which is why this area looks to be going back over drier. California wet, much of the south wet, much of the east coast wet, but drier in this interior section. And I think the reason for that is that the model is being overly influenced by the fact that El Nino is at its peak. Now, I think the MJO is actually kind of the trump card here. The MJO moves over the top of all of this right into this area, and it could outdo what that longer range forecast I just gave you from the European model is suggesting. So I will watch this area carefully to see if it changes in the coming forecast. Now, certainly in the next few days, we're okay. Lots of moisture coming in here. But it's the question about the longer term. And speaking of the longer term, the newest ECMWF long range was just released this morning. I was waiting on it before I recorded. January 1st data, so it's released on the 5th. This is what they're projecting El Nino to do. It's currently at its peak. They expect through winter to fade, by spring heading back toward neutral conditions. And there's a pretty large spread here by the time we get into July. We will have to watch, does this take a slower route out, or does it take a much more aggressive route out? Now, I need more time to analyze this. I literally got this an hour ago, okay? So I'm not going to be able to give you more than a view of the new long range because I haven't had time to think it through. But I want to show what it's doing. First, ocean temperatures. January, there's our El Nino at its peak. As we go into February, March, April, May, what do you notice here? The El Nino fades quickly. We get to June and July, and now we start to see some cooler water emerging. Now, this doesn't mean full-blown La Nina. You're going to have a lot of people going, oh, big La Nina coming. We've got to be patient with that analysis. Be careful with that. What I do note is that there's quite a bit of warm water pushing its way into this region. Now, why is that important? If warm water gets into this area, it increases the risk next summer of heat staying and dryness staying west. The warm water here increases the risk of the hurricane season, and it opens up often more moisture transport into this side of the country. Now, given that, I'm going to go look next at the U.S., and I'm going to make a bet, because I barely glanced at this morning, but let's go have I'm sorry, my fingers are cold. Here we go. Yeah, I'm not surprised here. Can I take you back? That's January, February, March. Let go. There we go. Very El Nino look. So drier here, wet in this area, wet. But as we go forward, sorry, I'm kind of fumbling around. My fingers are so cold out in my car this morning. February, March, April, spring. Now, if El Nino is slow in leaving, yeah, a lot of tight windows here. We got to keep talking about that. How about April, May, June? And then this is what I landed on at the beginning that I wanted to tell you about. A lot of times, if we see a transition out of El Nino, we tend to have a dividing line somewhere in here where you're drier west and wetter east. And this will be the story for this upcoming late spring and early summer we'll have to continue to monitor. I just wanted to show it to you now. I need time to stare at it and spend some time thinking about it, but I wanted to get it out to you this morning. Okay, lastly, the monsoon. This is where we wanted to be pulling the air from all along, October, November, December, and it didn't. It always came from here, remember? But it has now shifted. See it? And that is why we're seeing better rains. This animation, now you watch as I play it. Watch the storms coming through southern Brazil and watch the monsoon go. That is what was expected. Well, that's not what was expected. That's normal. This is normal monsoonal behavior that we finally got back into. This is satellite dry precipitation. So what we're now noticing is that over the next 10 days, because of that flow, can you almost see it? Because of that flow, this first map we've landed on is a 10-day probability forecast of getting at least 4 inches. If I step it down to 2 inches, I mean, there's widespread heavy rains hitting some of the driest areas. Also, Argentina, which is breaking out of its long-standing drought. So this is critical. Now, we want to know how long does that last. So I'm going to use the new European weeklies. This is a 7-day sliding window. And we see drier conditions coming back in mid-January. Now, January, this would be the 7 days ending on the 20th. Now, this drier weather honestly needs to stick around for these guys. The reason being they're going to want to harvest that first crop of soybeans, which has already been hit pretty hard with heat and drought. But notice that by the end of January and the beginning of February, both the GFS and the European model extended forecasts are trying to bring, as the MJO sweeps around, a lot of wet weather back in place. And if this happens, this is very ill-timed with harvest of first crop soybeans and planting of safrinha or second crop corn. We have to watch this carefully. Remember, I've always worried it was going to get really wet right around harvest for soybeans and planting of safrinha corn. And the big worry is with El Nino fading that we might get this look out by April. You see, the monsoon starts to slow down in April, but the models have been more aggressive on shutting it off early, which means the safrinha corn grown in Mato Grosso could be met with an early drop-off and rainfall. That will be top of mind to watch for South America in addition to all the other issues. Okay, I hope you have a good weekend. I apologize again for my website going down. It should be up and fixed. We'll get all the other pieces rolling soon. I'll work on that today, but I really appreciate your patience. I hope you all have a good weekend. We'll talk soon. Thanks.